In our headlines on this Friday, April 11th, here in South Korea, the Democratic Party is working on its primary election guidelines, while the People Power Party has agreed to a three-stage primary based on open and closed votes. On the diplomatic front, South Korea forges formal ties with Syria, meaning that Seoul now has official relations with all UN member states apart from North Korea. And for those of you here in capital Seoul, the Cherry Blossom Festival at Yeouido is in full bloom despite forecasts of rainfall this coming weekend. We start here on the local front, where the former head of the Democratic Party shared his vision for South Korea as a potential global leader. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Former Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung, now a preliminary presidential candidate, has pledged to make South Korea a first mover on the global stage. He laid out his campaign vision for a new government at the National Assembly on Friday, elaborating on the K initiative he introduced during his candidacy announcement the day before. He explained that while South Korea grew by emulating the successes of other countries, there are no clear models or answers to follow.
I will take South Korea into a new era of global leadership. This is the vision of the K initiative. To survive in today's fierce global battleground, I'm calling for a paradigm shift from copying to leading.
A recent poll released on Friday shows that Lee remains the front-runner among presidential hopefuls. A survey conducted by Gallup from Tuesday to Thursday on 1,005 adults aged 18 and over shows that Lee is the most favored candidate to be the next president at 37%. However, the DP has yet to announce its primary election rules or plans. The party is reportedly debating methods to select its candidate. One possible option is based on the results of a party membership vote for 50% and public opinion polls also for 50%. However, candidates outside Lee's faction are pushing for an open primary where the outcome is determined entirely by a public vote. Former DP lawmaker Kim Do-kwan and governor of Gyeonggi-do province Kim Dong-yeon, who both announced their bids earlier this week, have raised concerns, saying candidates are not being included in the discussions. The party aims to select its presidential candidate by early May. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Also on the political front, the People Power Party is planning to make its partisan primary election more appealing to those in their 20s and 30s. The party's primaries will require contenders to put on heart monitors during debates as well as partake in speed games, and to include in their introductions their personality type as evaluated via the MBTI test. Now, as of this Friday, 9 party members have voiced their intentions to run in the presidential race, including 5-term lawmaker Na Kyung-won, who declared her decision earlier this afternoon. Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon is scheduled to share his bid on the 13th of this month, while Hong Joong-pyo resigned from his Daegu mayor post today and is set to make his bid on the 14th. Impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol is moving out of his presidential residence and into his private residence today. The move comes precisely 1 week after the Constitutional Court ruled to uphold his impeachment. The ruling strips him of all his presidential benefits, with the exception of some 40 security officials. Yoon also faces a criminal trial on charges of insurrection, with a hearing set for next Monday. Should he be found guilty, he may face life in prison or the death penalty. South Korea has forged diplomatic ties with Syria. This means Seoul now has formal relations with all UN member states, with the exception of North Korea. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has details.
Syria has now become the 194th country in the world to form diplomatic relations with South Korea, marking a milestone for the country as it now has formal ties with all UN member states except North Korea. Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol visited Syria's capital city Damascus this week and signed a joint statement on Thursday local time with his counterpart Assad al-Shaibani.
By establishing diplomatic relations with Syria, the last remaining country with which we had no diplomatic ties, South Korea has now reached a historic milestone of establishing diplomatic relations with all 191 UN member states.
The two sides held a meeting where Cho said South Korea is willing to contribute to reconstruction efforts in Syria and discussed the possibility of Korean companies participating in rebuilding the country. He also promised Seoul would provide humanitarian assistance, including medicine, medical equipment, and rice. During his visit, Cho also met the country's interim president, Ahmed al-Shara, and said taking a firm stance against extremism and eliminating chemical weapons will help create an environment conducive to the country's development. South Korea started to work on forging diplomatic ties with Syria after more than 13 years of war recently put an end to the brutal Assad dictatorship, which had maintained a close relationship with North Korea for decades. The Assad family regime, which ruled the country for more than 50 years, collapsed in December during a major offensive by opposition forces. Syria has had diplomatic ties with North Korea since 1966, but the fall of the dictatorship brought about a significant shift in its relations with Pyongyang. Now that South Korea has forged ties with nations that have been close allies of the North, including Cuba last year, this latest diplomatic development is expected to further isolate Pyongyang on the global stage. 배은지, Arirang News.
The Finance Ministry's April assessment of the South Korean economy affirms the persistent presence of risk factors, including lackluster domestic consumption and U.S. import duties. Our Park Jun-han covers the latest findings.
The Finance Ministry's latest economic report points to a sluggish recovery in domestic demand and growing global uncertainty from Washington's tariffs as key downside risks. This assessment comes in the ministry's Green Book, a monthly report that outlines the trends in the country's economy. According to the ministry, while the impeachment of former President Yoon has reduced some internal uncertainty, external risks are growing due to the U.S. tariffs.
The 90-day moratorium has eased some of the pressure on our economy and companies, but the 10% tariff rate is still in effect. And then steel, automobiles. Those are also subject to item-specific tariffs, so there is downside pressure.
In the Green Book, there were some signs indicating a slowdown in domestic spending. The country's Consumer Sentiment Index dropped from February's 95.2 points to 93.4 in March. Also, preliminary GDP data shows that construction investment in the fourth quarter of 2024 fell 4.5% compared to the previous quarter. Year-on-year, construction investment was down 6.5%.
It's actually very hard to forecast consumption when the whole pattern of it is altering, when the uncertainty doesn't change as much as people usually forecast. So it's just a change in mood, and I think that's a big part of what's really hurting consumer sentiment these days.
The ministry vowed full support to combat economic uncertainties and downside pressures. It said it will continue to promote a strengthened economic recovery, including providing support for jobs, construction, and small businesses. At the same time, the ministry will make every effort to respond to trade risks, such as supporting Korean companies affected by the imposition of U.S. tariffs and expediting the supplementary budget to strengthen industrial competitiveness. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
And the government is poised to provide over 9 trillion won, that is, about $6 billion in financial support for export businesses. The plan was announced during a meeting led by Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok on this Friday. The package includes loans at lower rates and crucial funding for operations. A dedicated task force will also be set up to address changes in supply chains. The U.S. tariff on Chinese imports into the American market stands at 145%. The clarification was made by the White House on Thursday. Our Park Gun-woo reports.
The White House said Thursday that imports from China now face a retaliatory 145% tariff. According to officials, an existing 20% levy will be added to the 125% tariff announced the day before. That tariff was imposed by Donald Trump in February in response to China's role in supplying fentanyl and its precursors to the U.S. However, Trump also said he remains open to talks with Beijing.
Well, I have great respect for President Xi. He's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time. And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries.
On Wednesday, Trump announced a 90-day pause on additional tariffs, keeping a 10% baseline tariff in place for trading countries except China. The following day, he said what happens after that would depend on the situation at that time, but stressed that tariffs would return if no negotiations took place during the pause. Also on Thursday, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said 15 countries had made explicit offers to lower tariffs, with some being considered and other deals close to being agreed.
We're setting up a very orderly process to prioritize countries and to make sure that the countries that are most important for getting this to the finish line are the countries that we bring in first.
He added that he expects a lot of movement on trade deals within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Now, as heard in that report, despite its imposition of hefty tariffs on China, the Trump administration has also shared hopes for trade talks with Beijing. And Beijing, for its part, claims its door for dialogue has always been open. Our Lee Jae-myung has more.
The United States and China have been facing off with tariffs imposed left and right. China responded to U.S. President Donald Trump's 104% tariffs by imposing an 84% tariff on American goods. Trump quickly countered with additional tariffs against China, with levies now at up to 145%. On Thursday, Beijing expressed its willingness to hold talks with the U.S. in the hope of putting an end to the tariff war.
China's position is clear and consistent. If the United States wants to talk, our door is open. However, dialogue must be conducted on an equal footing and on the basis of mutual respect.
The spokesperson also warned that if the U.S. insists on pursuing a tariff war, China will respond and fight till the end. She added that pressure, threats, or blackmail are not the right way to deal with China. The European Union is also open for negotiations with the U.S. as it announced it would put its trade retaliation measures on hold for 90 days. According to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Thursday, the bloc took note of the announcement by President Trump, adding that the EU wants to give negotiations a chance. The European Commission spokesperson also announced the 27-member bloc's willingness to hold talks with Washington.
We believe we can reach all sorts of beneficial outcomes from both sides that would avoid the types of tariffs that we believe are harmful and counterproductive. So we're continuing all our preparations and we will continue to talk to our member states, talk to our industry, and we remain ready to engage in a meaningful way with the US.
Despite the tariff-for-tariff war between major economies, there are now hopes that the parties involved will sit down for talks in a bid to ease the global trade tensions. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
In other news, a painful chapter in Korea's history has been included in UNESCO's register. Our Park Hyo-bin covers this event.
The road to remembrance begins with tragedy. In the aftermath of Korea's liberation, Jeju Island faced severe economic hardship, leading to growing public unrest. Tensions boiled over in 1947 when police opened fire during a demonstration, killing 6 civilians. In response to increasing crackdowns involving far-right youth groups, local units of the Workers' Party launched an armed uprising on April 3, 1948. Over the next 7 years, there were an estimated 15,000 civilian casualties, while some estimate the number of victims to be as high as 30,000. After decades of efforts to uncover the truth, the Jeju 4-3 archives were officially added to UNESCO's Memory of the World Register on Thursday, local time, in Paris. This recognition honors a rich collection of materials, records of military trials, postcards from imprisoned survivors, and the government's official report. UNESCO acknowledged the archive's historical value, authenticity, and global significance, highlighting its role in confronting past state violence and restoring the dignity of the victims.
The inscription of the Jeju 4-3 incident highlights the universal value of human rights and offers a new path forward through Jeju's spirit of reconciliation and healing.
Also, the Reforestation Archive, which records Korea's large-scale forest recovery after the Korean War, was added to UNESCO's Memory of the World list. The reforestation project is now considered a model case for developing nations and a valuable reference in global discussions on climate action and desertification prevention.
The Reforestation Archive showcases Korea's post-war recovery efforts and serves as a global model for climate action and desertification prevention.
With these additions, South Korea now has 20 entries in UNESCO's Memory of the World Register, bolstering its global reputation as a leader in preserving documentary heritage. Beyond preserving the past, these records continue to speak to the world, reminding us of the enduring power of truth, resilience, and collective memory. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, we often claim that our culture has been putting Korea on the map. But in this next report, we hear from an artist who's literally been doing just that, placing Korea on a map. Our culture correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
You know Gwanghwamun Gate, but you've never seen it quite like this. This is how UK-based map artist Jenny Sparks reimagined one of Seoul's most iconic landmarks. For over a decade, her hand-drawn maps have covered major cities across the West, such as London, New York, Paris, and Berlin. Now she's turning her creative compass toward Asia, starting with Seoul.
The traditional architecture is extremely different from all the cities that I've done before. I think also the actual geography of the place, it's very mountainous, including in the middle of the city.
This idea sparked when Seol Jae-woo, who runs a local tour business in Seoul, reached out to Sparks a few years ago.
Maps are usually seen as just information, useful in the moment, but often forgotten after. Jenny Sparks' map, however, felt like a work of art. So I thought, what if we could create a map people would treasure, one that tells a story of the place they live?
That question led to Sparks creating a map of Seoul's Seochon neighborhood before setting her sights on the entire city. It's halfway done, but already you can see what makes her maps so unique. It's not just the pop art style design or the bold use of color, but the sheer level of detail, including hidden gems like Tongin Market in Jongno-gu District. That insight comes from her rigorous research, her first and most important step through books and videos. She then sketches out the bones of the city, rivers, mountains, parks, and metro lines before layering in Seoul's soul.
I will usually ask people from that city and say, is this right? Or take a look at this. Is there anything you're this is absolutely wrong? No, why you've forgotten this building, or this is this is a really famous cafe, this is a really famous restaurant you have. And then right at the end, it's just just drawing lots of residential buildings. And
it's a challenging process that takes months, but the map in the end becomes something more than directions. It becomes a story, one you can hold in your hands and revisit. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Cherry Blossom Festival at Yeouido here in capital Seoul is in full bloom. Our Choi Soo-young covers these annual sights of the spring season.
It's cherry blossom season now in South Korea. Many people have come to Yeouido in Seoul to see the beautiful cherry blossoms fully blooming in the warm spring weather. Visitors enjoy a nice spring walk along the 1.7 kilometers long Yunjungno Road right by the National Assembly building. This is one of the most famous hotspots to sightsee and enjoy the cherry blossoms in the capital city, Seoul. This year's Cherry Blossom Festival in Yeouido started on Tuesday. Over 1,800 cherry blossom trees are planted here, circling around the National Assembly building and right next to the Hangang River. With rain in the forecast for the weekend, many people came to hang out and enjoy the flowers, even though it's a weekday.
We came here as a vacation, but we were not planning to see this beautiful blossoms that are going on right now with the beauty of spring. And so we are very grateful to be here and see the beauty of this beautiful park. It's just exploding with color, and the blossoms are absolutely stunning.
My baby just turned 1, so this is the first time seeing flowers like this. It was really fun and joyful. My baby really loved it too.
Actually, this is my first time coming to the Yeouido Cherry Blossom Festival. It's also the first time for my baby, so I'm really happy to be here. The weather is nice too, so we're enjoying the flowers a lot.
Facilities such as shelters for light picnics, photo zones, and temporary health centers have been set up for visitors. It also has a special barrier-free tour program for people who are visually impaired. They can walk around Yeouido Park with a guide, touch the flowers to feel them, and enjoy the sound of the street performances. For those who want to know the best spots to enjoy this stunning view, use Exit 1 of National Assembly subway station on subway line number 9 or Exit 2 of Yeouido station on line number 5. The festival was supposed to start on April 4th last Friday, but it was delayed as this fell on verdict day for former President Yoon's impeachment trial. Because of that, the festival will continue until Saturday, April 12th. To run the festival, Yeongdeung Pogo office will close some parts of the road behind the National Assembly and traffic restrictions will stay in place until Sunday, April 13th. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Europe, defense ministers of 31 nations convened in Brussels to discuss the formation of a multinational force aimed at supporting Ukraine. The so-called Coalition of the Willing, led by the United Kingdom and France, aims to establish a framework for ensuring lasting peace in the region. On Thursday local time at the NATO headquarters in Brussels, the defense ministers deliberated on creating a reassurance force for Ukraine in the event of a future ceasefire with Russia. The proposed force is envisioned to comprise of between 10,000 and 30,000 troops stationed away from active front lines. However, uncertainties remain over the role of the United States. While the U.S. did not participate in the Brussels meeting, European ministers underscored the importance of American support. Meanwhile, in the United States, a helicopter carrying a family from Spain crashed in New York City's Hudson River, resulting in the deaths of all 6 individuals on board, including the pilot. On Thursday afternoon local time at 3:17 p.m., a Bell 206 helicopter operated by New York Helicopters crashed into the Hudson River near Lower Manhattan. The aircraft carried a Spanish family of 2 adults and 3 children along with the pilot. Eyewitnesses observed the helicopter breaking apart mid-air before crashing upside down into the water. The Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board have begun investigations into the cause of the crash. Mayor Eric Adams extended condolences to the victims' families, describing the incident as heartbreaking and tragic. On Saturday night, April 12th, a full pink moon that is smaller and fainter will be visible in the April spring night sky. The so-called micromoon, the smallest and faintest in 2025, occurs when the moon is at its furthest point from Earth, approximately 406,006 kilometers away. According to NASA, the micromoon will be up to 14% smaller and around 30% dimmer than a supermoon. Despite its name, which originates from the seasonal bloom of pink wildflowers in early spring, the pink moon won't appear pink. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
It certainly felt more like early summer out there today. Now we are in for a significant change this weekend. Get ready for some widespread rain starting from Jeju Island, along with thunderstorms and strong winds. Meanwhile, Gangwon-do province could see rain turning into snow. So yes, this spell the rain will bring cooler air to the country, but the rain will help ease the dryness and clear the dust in the air. And tomorrow morning will be warmer under cloudy skies, kicking off at 13 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Daegu cooler at 9 degrees. Then highs will be around the norms, getting up to 18 degrees in the capital. Daegu and Daejeon will be topping out at 21 degrees. It looks like the rain will continue in the capital area until Monday. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us and thank you for now.